Selling in a Televisual Age, Module 2, Content. In the previous module, we discussed ensuring you are seen and heard clearly and perceived as authentic and trustworthy. Now, let's look at what you will actually say to be persuasive, influential, and someone that they can do business with. Like any other physical meeting, when you're speaking on a video conference call, whether you're using Zoom or another facility, filming a video or presenting to an audience or pitching to a prospect, creating an agenda is essential. It keeps you on track. It helps ensure that you know what you're going to say, that your key message is clear, and more importantly, that you understand what your audience wants to hear. Therefore, it is a mutual agenda, not just what you want out of the interaction, but also what they want. So think in terms of storytelling, and let's dive straight into what a compelling story looks like. I use a 2-minute storytelling framework that identifies 3 essential elements: incident, action, and the benefit. People are engaged by stories, especially when you're in this kind of televisual situation. You must keep people engaged, interested in what you are saying, and relevant to their needs. Telling compelling, relevant stories and thinking about not what you do, but what you have done for others allows people to step into your experience and take the journey with you. In this way, you don't need to sell or close the deal. People will close you. Make the stories, and this sounds very strange, as emotionally connecting and visually rich as you possibly can. Let me give you an example. The story I'm going to tell you is about a gentleman by the name of Mr. Khan, who was the last house owner in this street of houses that I had to buy for Sainsbury's, the superstore. It's true, and see if you can find the elements of incident, action, and benefit. Mr. Moscow, you're unprofessional, Mr. Khan announced in a raised, angry voice down the phone. The hackles on the back of my neck stood up. I pride myself on my professionalism, and this was a slight I was not prepared to take. I responded aggressively. What do you mean, unprofessional? I did exactly as you wanted me to. I delivered a pile of agents' details so that you could research what was available on the market in your area. That may be so, Mr. Moscow, but when I went around to see the agents, they didn't know anything about me. Mr. Khan was still irate. With the same level of irritation in my voice, I said, Mr. Khan, that was not the deal. All I said I would do was to research the property in your area and leave the details on your doorstep. In fact, you wouldn't even let me in your house. You made it very clear that you were never going to move. Adding, still irate, all I have ever wanted to do was come and see you. After a short silence, Mr. Khan said, I'm available on Tuesday. To which I replied, that's not convenient. I'll be with you on Thursday at 6:30 in the evening. Mr. Khan's house was one of the last houses in the street of houses that I had to purchase on behalf of Sainsbury's. They were building a new store in Kenton, North London, and we needed to use part of the rear gardens of these houses to improve the footprint of the store. Thursday arrived, and I sat outside Mr. Khan's house, wondering how I could persuade this man to sell his house. Even at the inflated market price Sainsbury's would prepare to pay, he was still not interested in moving. A thought then suddenly came to me. Histories. I stepped up to the front door and rang the bell. Mr. Khan opened the door and with a belligerent look on his face looked me up and down. I was ushered into the front room. I said, Mr. Khan, before we sit down, tell me your history. He proceeded to tell me that he had lived in Iraq, and when there had been a change of government, the situation for him as a professor had become untenable, and he had to leave. He moved to Iran. Further upheaval ensued when the Shah of Iran was deposed and Mr. Khan had to move on again. That's when he came to England. I stopped him there. Mr. Khan, I apologize. You have been dispossessed twice in your life, and I'm seeking to do it a third time. We'll find a way to build the store without disturbing you. His demeanor changed. Immediately, he brought out a bottle of whiskey, placed it in front of us, and we drank half a bottle together, although I don't drink spirits. Ultimately, we did do the deal, and he got one of the highest payouts in the street. He even asked me to carry out a survey on the house he was buying. Although I'm not a surveyor, he trusted me enough to want my input. The life lesson I've learned very early on was, if you want to do business with somebody, first understand their history. That's what I call sensory acuity. The next element I want to discuss with you is called a 30-second commercial, which is used mostly when you're in a networking situation, whether that is live or online. It can also be incorporated into a formal presentation. It is used when a person asks you, what do you do? Think of it as an elevator pitch. It states not what you do, but the problems that you have solved for others. It may resonate with them and the problems that they are experiencing. It asks an open question that invites a reply. The framework has three main elements. Number one, who do you typically work with, and what is their position in an organization and the sector which that organization is in? Two, what are the three problems you know people are suffering? Then three, that open question to start and continue the conversation. What I'd like to do now is give you an example of that 30-second commercial. So this is the 30-second commercial framework. This particular one I created for a firm of accountants. So when they're in a networking situation and are asked, what do you do? This is what they say. Typically, I work with partners, business owners, or sales teams in the financial, retail, or technology industry who are frustrated that they are being wrongly advised, who are worried that they are paying too much in tax, or they're fearful that communication with their advisors is poor. I don't suppose these situations are damaging your business. So you can see they've stated who they work with, what industry, the three things that they know are paining their potential clients, and then that open question, is this what's damaging your business? And that starts a conversation. So what you need to do is look at this and put your own spin on it, knowing what are the pains your potential clients are suffering. So now you know how to construct a specific story. I've also given you a framework that you can talk about when you go into a networking situation and somebody asks you that question, what do you actually do? Now let's look at the specifics of content creation. And content creation is about the four cornerstones of an effective presentation. And if you like, this is the last of the critical elements of this content creation. Now, the four elements of this particular framework is personal credibility, your company credibility, 3 or 4 facts about what you do, and more specifically, how that has benefited others. There's a final element of those 4 cornerstones. It's WIFM. Now, that's not a radio station. It stands for what's in it for me. And of course, that means what's in it for them. So what I'm going to do is give you those key messages translated into a storytelling kind of format. And to illustrate those 4 cornerstones, I'm going to give you an example. And my example is the personal example. So first of all, personal credibility. That is about perhaps how long I have been in business. It also talks about the sectors that I've been involved in, and that is property, in advertising. It is also in retail, and also in the financial world. So that gives me some basis for my personal credibility. What is the company credibility? Well, that is the companies that I've been involved in. I've talked about British Land before. I've talked about Sainsbury's. I could talk about Mothercare. I could talk about other organizations that I have been directly involved in and work that I've done for them. The 3 or 4 facts of it are what I specifically did. I'm talking in terms of heads of terms. You would need, and I do in a formal presentation, expand upon that. So with Mothercare, I could talk about the franchise partners that I worked with and helped the organization present to these franchise partners to make their sales increase. And I could talk about specific facts of how I increased 12.5% from virtually zero sales that they did. So I could talk about that. I could talk about British Land, helping them go out to sell a property bond in the United States. I could then talk about Sainsbury's, and you've heard that story, how I bought a street full of houses. So that is the elements of the 4 cornerstones. The final element is that what's in it for me. And then I translate that back to as my experience of helping these companies achieve these figures or retention of staff or whatever it may be. That then will help in terms of them understanding how I can help them. So if you're filming a video and you're talking about those elements, let's look at something that can help you there. So if you are filming a video, it's essential to put subtitles on them. This happens automatically on Zoom and YouTube. So let's have a look at these facilities in greater depth. First of all, the first slide is of LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn, you can turn on the captions, the subtitles. The problem here is you have no control over the positioning. So here you can see it's obscuring the face. Also, in terms of what the algorithm hears, you have no control over. So if we mumble at one point, then it will show a mumble, or it will just give the wrong word, certainly in some cases, the wrong spelling. The second set of slides here shows something from YouTube. Now, YouTube is slightly better because you can upload your subtitles to YouTube, or it will translate it, as we've seen here, word by word, line by line. That's great. Again, those 2 facilities of not choosing where the subtitles appear and ensuring that it does translate what you actually said rather than what the algorithm hears. So the third element I really prefer. It's called Subtly. Now, the problem here, if it is a problem, is that it's a paid-for facility. But here you have total control. You can determine your own brand colors for what the subtitles look like. You can choose a background. Again, your brand colors. And here you have total control of the way it translates the words that you've said. So you can correct if it's wrong, and you can correct spelling if that is wrong. As I say, those are the 3 facilities I recommend certainly that you always include subtitles, because there is a realization that a number of people, and perhaps even the majority of people, will view videos with the sound off, so that the only facility they have to understand what you're saying is to read what you're saying. So those are the essential elements of content creation. You need to personalize these and make these frameworks your own. Create your own stories, define the problems you know your target audience and your clients are suffering, and the experience and the credibility statements that you can make, and the examples that give you authority and authenticity. The last module I will discuss is delivery. It's not enough to be seen and heard clearly. You must know what you will say. You must deliver the message, presentation, and pitch with power and impact. You need to engage with your audience within 7 seconds and keep them engaged. Again, one of my mantras is how you look, what you say, and how you look when you say, all has to be congruent. It's an awareness of the pace of your voice, the tone of your voice, and your confident body language. Before you even open your mouth, your audience of one or many will have made a judgment about you. You know the phrase, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. We will discuss all of them in the following video. Delivery.